Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov arrived in Cuba with the aim of strengthening bilateral relations. And the French railway workers gathered on Thursday in what they called a day of railway anger against the pension reform. And despite a new ceasefire announcement, violent clashes persist in Khartoum, the capital of Sudan. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. On Wednesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov arrived in Cuba with the aim of strengthening bilateral relations. During his stay in the country, the foreign minister will meet with his Cuban counterpart, Bruno Rodriguez Parrilla, and with the president of Cuba, Miguel Diaz-Canel. On Thursday, his agenda will be focused on strengthening bilateral cooperation in political, economic, commercial, educational, and humanitarian matters, among others. This is Lavrov's 8th visit to the Caribbean island since his appointment. The Cuban visit takes place within the framework of a bilateral agenda that already included Brazil, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. Priorly, during his visit to Nicaragua, as part of his Latin American tour, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov offered a press conference to acknowledge and praise the good relations between both countries. After landing at the Augusto Cesar Sandino International Airport in Managua, the Russian Foreign Minister met with Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega and the Vice President Rosario Murillo. During his press conference, Lavrov thanks the authorities of the Central American country for their invitation and for the quality of the reception in Nicaragua. The top Russian diplomat noted that Moscow and Managua have a good basis for increasing their bilateral relations and bringing them to a to a higher level of quality. Lavrov reminded the visit of a large Nicaraguan delegation to Russia, during which a large number of meetings were held, resulting in the signing of numerous agreements.
We addressed many issues of mutual interest, such as economic issues, as well as cooperation within the framework of the Intergovernmental Commission. We agreed to hold a discussion during the St. Petersburg International Forum to be held in June this year.
In this context, Russian Chancellor Sergei Lavrov informed about the signing of the Atomic Energy Agreement with Managua to be used in the production of drugs.
At the end of March, another very important agreement was signed on the peaceful use of atomic energy. In the first stage, atomic energy is supposed to be used not for energy purposes, but for the production of medicines. We have a good cooperation in the field of education. There are humanitarian exchanges, as there are many Nicaraguan students studying in Russian universities.
The Venezuelan Foreign Minister Iván Gil welcomed his Bolivian counterpart, Rogelio Mayra, in Caracas on Wednesday. The meeting is part of the third round of the bilateral Joint Commission, during which they are expected to sign 14 agreements concerning energy, trade, and social political issues. The drafting of those agreements took place over more than 50 bilateral working meetings. The Bolivian Foreign Minister also announced the arrival in Caracas on Thursday, April the 20th, of Bolivian President Luis Arce Catacora on an official visit. He will be meeting Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros, and they will both be presenting at the signing of those 14 bilateral agreements. The Mexican armed forces are being spied on, but not by criminal groups, but by the Pentagon. This has been denounced by the President of Mexico. Our correspondent, Daniel Rosas, with all the details.
President Andrés Manuel López Obrador affirmed that the United States spies on the Mexican armed forces.
And we are going to take care of the information of the Navy and the Defense Secretariat, because we are being spied on by the Pentagon.
The reactions were immediate.
There's a brave guy who came out and does tell the United States things they don't like to hear. He calls them out. He doesn't stay quiet. And as he says, we're no longer their backyard. Not anymore.
And as Lopez Obrador said, we should not allow any kind of foreign intelligence working in our country, because that is what the Constitution establishes.
In his morning conference, Lopez Obrador said that the government of the neighboring country also leaks information to the media. The investigation is ongoing, and so are the complaints through diplomatic channels.
We will resort to the right diplomatic ways to ask for this. We are going to do it today, to demand information, the details. The United States is obliged to share them with Mexico or, and even if it doesn't, at least to point out that the information is not truthful.
And this is not the only bone of contention. It was also revealed that the U.S. agencies had infiltrated Mexican cartels in order to learn about their operations, something that Mexican authorities are investigating.
Daniel Rosas, TeleSUR, Ciudad de México.
Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. In Cuba, members of parliament re-elected Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez as the president of the republic for the next 5 years and Salvador Valdés Mesa as the vice president. The president of the National Electoral Council, Alina Balseiro, pointed out that the 462 parliamentarians present at the constitutive session of the 10th legislature of the National Assembly of People's Power exercised the right to vote. Following this re-election as president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel proposed to ratify Manuel Marrero as prime minister of the republic. His proposal was approved by a majority of the votes, taking into account that Marrero's previous administration took place in a complex context, marked by the COVID-19 pandemic, the intensification of the blockade, and the confrontation of difficult national situations. Díaz-Canel also proposed to ratify as vice president or as vice ministers Ramiro Valdés, Inés María Chapman, Jorge Luis Tapia, Jorge Luis Perdomo, Ricardo Cabrizas, as well as Alejandro Gil, who was ratified as Minister of Economy and Planning. In the constitutive session of the 10th legislature of the National Assembly of People's Power, at the proposal of the President, the members of the Council of Ministers were renewed, with 6 new proposals which provide stability to face the country's complex economic situation. Naima Ariadne Trujillo will serve as Minister of Education, Walter Baluja as Minister of Higher Education, Vladimir Regueiro as Minister of Finance and Prices, Major General Raúl Acosta as President of the National Institute of Territorial Planning and Urbanism, and Alfonso Noya as the President of the Institute of Information and Social Communication, formerly the Cuban Institute of Radio and Television. The Cuban President acknowledged the work of those who previously informed and performed these functions in the complex national and international situation. The re-elected president of the Republic of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, referred to the great social justice that comprises the Cuban project and emphasized that in it, the development and prosperity of the Cuban people are a priority in contrast to other models.
It's a mean to conquer everyone the greatest rate of justice and happiness. That is not possible to achieve in another system where the well-being is associated with the violence, where some people have few or nothing, because others have the biggest part of the wealth created by the people that have less. The project that we have proposed to date is different from other models, where there will be more levels equality, whether individual and collective, that it have and that it includes the prosperity.
The Cuban president also assured the commitment of the 470 people who make up the National Assembly to defend the interests of the Cuban people, and he also talked about how Cuba defends its only party.
The 470 people that we designated as deputies, we do not want the curricula by having the favor of the party. Our only support is to fulfill the laws of the government, and is a defensor of the interests of the people. Each one of us is sitting here today to defend the interests of the most, and we are not going to earn more money or be deputies as it happens in as many countries that they pursue of multi-party democratic models. Cuba defends its model, the unity that we have today since Jose Marti founded the party, because it's in an history.
We move on to other topics. French railway workers gathered on Thursday in what they called a day of railway anger against the pension reform. The unions of the sector called for mobilization with strikes and street actions and acts in emblematic stations of the country, which they considered a preview of the demonstrations to be held on May the 1st, on the International Workers' Day. The strike will affect 1 out of 5 regional trains, 60% of daytime intercity trains and all-night trains. However, the state-owned company SNZF added that traffic will be practically normal on national and international high-speed trains. On the other hand, unions' demonstrations against pension reforms are planned on Thursday in Rennes, Nantes, and other French cities. TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries using StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Thursday, local media in Sudan confirmed that despite a new ceasefire announcement, clashes persist in Khartoum, the capital of that country. The WHO has raised to nearly 300 the number of civilians killed since the start of this conflict between military rivals that has left Sudan in one of its worst situations in recent years. A new 24-hour truce began on Wednesday to allow civilians to return safely to their families and get the emergency supplies they need, but it has not been respected. The international community and aid groups are demanding guarantees to be able to provide aid to civilians trapped after 6 days of heavy urban fighting. In this context, Kenyan President William Ruto expressed on Wednesday his deep concern over the situation in Sudan and stressed the importance of achieving peace in the region.
That the escalation of hostilities in Sudan could implicate external, regional, and international actors and degenerate into a security and humanitarian crisis on a disastrous scale. It is time to silence the guns in our region and continent so that we can focus on the urgent work of enabling our people to pursue opportunities and actualize their aspirations in peace and tranquility.
In Chad, the defense minister stated on Wednesday that some 320 Sudanese soldiers who have fled the fighting ravaging in their country have been taken in. And he also reaffirmed that they have received civilians and that they will be guaranteed comforts to keep them safe.
This influx of refugees, I want to tell you that I already have 320 soldiers who are already in our territory. They're military. No doubt they are civilians, so we are in the process of welcoming them and taking all the necessary measures to ensure that they are suitably accommodated.
The spokesperson for the UN Secretary-General, Staffan Dujarric, stated that the situation in Sudan is extremely dangerous for civilians and other members of the international community who are caught in the crossfire.
Imagine the continued heavy fighting in Sudan is having devastating consequences for Sudanese civilians, as well as our staff and other members of the international community who are caught in the crossfire. We reiterate to the parties to the conflict that they must respect international law. They are obliged to protect civilians and ensure the safety and security of all United Nations and associated personnel, as well as their premises. Our assets, and trapped civilians must be able to receive assistance, access essential supplies, and evacuate to safer zones as needed.
The United Nations official also declared that Sudan's healthcare system is in critical conditions.
Humanitarians must be able to safely carry out their work. Aid agencies must be able to safely move staff, replenish critical supplies. Meanwhile, we are worried that Sudan's healthcare system could completely collapse. Hospitals need additional staff, they need additional supplies, and they need additional blood supplies. The World Health Organization says that 16 hospitals across the country have been forced to shut down completely because of the violence and attacks on hospitals.
More than 80 people were killed and hundreds injured in Yemen on Thursday after a charity distribution sparked one of the deadliest stampedes in a decade. The latest tragedy to strike the Arabian Peninsula's poorest country came days ahead of the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of the holy month of Ramadan. The incident took place inside a school where hundreds of people had gathered to receive the handouts. According to witnesses, the stampede happened after armed Houthis fired into the air in an attempt to crowd control, apparently striking an electrical wire and causing it to explode. The Ministry of Interior said in a statement that the dead and the injured have been moved to nearby hospitals, and those responsible for the distribution were taken into custody. The ministry did not provide an exact number of people killed in the incident. And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.